Today we're going to build this squid knife. It's a concept knife, which is what I call a knife when I mess up a lot. You can see the final blade is blurred out, so you have to wait till the end to see what it looks like. The plan is to cut out a pattern in a knife, fill it with brass, then send it off for someone who knows what they're doing to engrave that brass and make it even cooler. You've probably guessed by now the wheels come off, because hey, that's what I do. At any rate, stick around to see what happens. There may be some sweet, sweet choppy choppy at the end. Let's make a knife. First, I printed a knife design from knifeprint.com on this piece of paper, and then I drew in some scroll work with a pencil. Then I put a picture of this drawing on my computer, uploaded it to knifeprint.com, and there I used their trace feature to put the design in their web-based software where it was to be lasered out. And unfortunately, some of those lines were too close together and the design was just too fine, in the corners especially, and it couldn't really be reliably cut out with the laser. So I found a picture of a squid online that I liked, and I drew it by hand, making some changes to the tentacles that I fancied. And once I get it onto knifeprint.com, I'll have to make a few more changes with the tentacles so that those smaller areas can successfully be lasered. You'll see what that's about in a minute. So far so good. I'm going to expand this a little bit and then draw the rest of the knife around it. I forgot to skeletonize the handle with their skeletonized tool. I'll just drill some extra holes later. And now to enact my evil plan. The goal is to put brass inside that cutout area. How cool is that going to be? Truly wicked and depraved. So how am I going to get the brass in here? I think there's a couple ways. The first is to put a metal sheet back here, refractory around it to seal it up, and then on this side put a brass plate, refractory around that, and a metal piece on top to limit oxidation in the steel, and then put that in the oven and let the brass melt in all the way through and just fill up all these gaps. The other method is to put this on casting sand and build up an area of sand around here and then just pour the brass in. But I worry that these smaller details surrounded by this steel are going to draw heat out of that brass pretty quick, and it's going to solidify and not really get into the smaller areas for sure. Listen, I'm not a total moron. I tried this out first, okay? So I put a test piece of brass in the bottom of this welded up box and heated it to 1900 degrees in my heat treat oven. It filled the holes pretty nicely. Even the irregular notches I dremeled out along the sides of the holes were filled, so it's pretty promising. I'm going to go ahead and dremel out some suction cups at angles in the legs and such that they don't go all the way through the steel and don't line up side to side. In other words, each side of the cleaver looks slightly different with the layout of the suction cups. This will essentially lock the brass in place after it's cast and solidifies. Center line marked. Time for grinding. So obviously after grinding the bevels in, I am going to have to go back and probably redo some of the suction cups, which have partially been removed from the sides by now, but that's all right. I'll just go in and re-dremel them. All right, we're going to rig this up here with some plates underneath, and then we're going to melt the brass through. All right, so even though I was able to just melt the brass and it sink by gravity down into these bigger holes, I tried it with these smaller holes, and it just sort of melted halfway through. Didn't get all the way down in there. So there's a lot of small little nooks and crannies in here. So I don't think that just melting this and letting it sink in by gravity is going to work. It might work for these larger areas, but these smaller, finer tentacles, I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know that pouring it, like I said, I think if I pour it it's going to hit this steel and just instantly solidify. It's not going to get down there either. So I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do here. Oh, we're going to try to metal through anyway. Ha! This is some refractory I'm using here to fixate the plate to the bottom. The brass shouldn't really melt through this, and it will withstand some high temperatures, so I think this is really the best way to set this up. This is Rutland's furnace cement on top. It's going to sort of pool the brass and keep it from running off the sides. Here we go into the oven with some steel foil on the bottom just in case. The oven's going to be set at 1900 degrees just like my experiment. So I decided to take a quick peek at 1600 degrees and it didn't look like it was doing much. But at 1900 degrees... Oh.
We baked a cake.
All right, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I've never poured brass or melted aluminum or copper or anything like that. It's really showing right now. So if anyone wants to sound off in the comment section as to what the f is going on, it'd be great. What? That doesn't mean it went all the way through. So yeah, it's just a big blob. That is pretty sweet. So as we clean this up, it's not too bad. There's some little voids or bubbles in the brass there. What's interesting is that the brass went through this way and then it backfilled, like in some of these areas, like right there and there, but it didn't fill up all the way. This could be a problem. So this side is way more problematic than the last side. Look at all these gaps in the brass. Now, how am I going to fill those? Am I just going to try to pour brass in each of those and try to fill them up? Am I going to pour brass in each of these and try to get these to fill? Yeah, that's ruined. Let's try pouring this time. I've got a second blank and some casting sand here, but I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing. So you can get out of here, sand. I'm opting for steel foil instead. Yeah, this seems like a much better idea. Yeah, I missed a spot there at the top, so I'm going to have to re-pour that area. I'm not really sure this is going to work. With some creative grinding and maybe some peening, the first side might work, but the second side is a real mess. There's just too many gaps and bits of brass that weren't poured at the same time and just sort of globular. So this pattern is complicated. I don't have the skill to really pour this correctly. The brass has got to be knocked out, and we're going to have to take just sort of a different tact here. You probably noticed I didn't do any grinding before that pouring attempt. I wanted a nice flat surface to work with, nor did I Dremel in the suction cups from side to side like last time, which is sort of fortunate because the brass wasn't locked in and I could knock it out. So let's go ahead and get this thermally cycled and heat treated. Then we'll have to clean it up a little bit, and I've got some ideas as to what to put in that empty squid spot. Alright, we got some good rough grinding done before the quench. Now it's time for our finished grinding and get our final blade geometry applied. Then I have to take a Dremel and sort of clean out the inside of this pattern, get the scale off there from the heat treating process. And I'm going to do some chamfering around the head and then put those suction cups back in the tentacles like we did with our first brass attempt to lock in whatever filler material we put in here.
Oh, well, hello, I'm Mr. Finger, and I've been covered in furnace cement for about a week now. I wish Steve would plan this cluster fudge out a little better, maybe.
Yeah, I don't have to take that sass. Someone just got assigned a new hygiene role. You've noticed by now we're going to be using that tabletop 2-part epoxy resin to fill this in. We're going to use some soap dyes to color it. It'll be pretty cool. You know, it won't be exactly what I was looking for as far as brass that we could engrave, but I think it'll still be pretty neat. So let's see if we can get this done. As far as epoxy resins go, there aren't a lot of bubbles here, but you can take a torch or a heat gun to it to get any of the surface bubbles out that you see, and that's what the instructions say to do. So, all right, there's trouble at the mill. The blue stuff, a little bit tacky, but it's drying. The green, goopy. This is like 36 hours, so I do not know what the story is with that. This is going to be soaked in a bin with acetone for about 24 hours. The green runs out pretty quick. The blue takes a little longer to turn gelatinous, but it scrapes out pretty easily with my fingers. I don't really know what happened here. These were mixed in the same cup. I tried purple, and purple did real well, so I'm wondering if the problem is with the green dye. I don't know. But I think we can mix up a second batch and get something to stick. Well, there it is. Looks pretty solid. If this doesn't work, it's going to be a real punch in the dongle. Yeah, I mean, there was one little bubble on the underside. I put a little nail in there, made a hole, and then scraped up that area on the inside, mixed some more blue epoxy, filled it in. It dried just fine. You can't even tell there's a problem there. So I didn't clean up the inside radius of that tentacle very well, or even some other parts of it. They're just very, very difficult areas to get into, and I could have used a smaller file and some sandpaper on the file and stuff like that, but I just did not take the time. Maybe I'll clean it up a little better later, but it is what it is right now. This project is another reason why I like knifeprint.com so much. It's a very accessible way for people to get into some creative things with knife making. So Green Beetle there at checkout will get you a discount off their professional level services. Check it out. The edge is a bit chewy, but it still cuts advert paper. I need to find something to choppy chop.